the Let's Talk Fabulous show. I am this week's host, Kim O'Neill, and today we are talking about positive male role models. And I need to add the word with in there because we have with us today a panel of really wonderful positive male role models as well. And of course, we have to acknowledge today, as we are recording this live, it is also Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all of you out there. I hope you're having a wonderful day, however you experience Father's Day. And with that said, our panelists today are not all fathers because positive male role models come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds, all of it, right? Don't need to be a father to be a positive male role model. Let us know in the chat where you're joining us from and how this topic is resonating for you. We're going to get into today's conversation. Let's talk. All right. Hello and welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We are going to have some fun today. Who here, just a quick show of hands, who here is a father? Please raise your hands if you're a father. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for that. Chris and Norman, happy Father's Day. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good to be here.
And Andy and Jeff, I am also so glad that you chose to be here on Father's Day as well, because it means something different to all of us. And so I appreciate your time here today. We are going to have a really, I want to say, deep conversation. I love deep conversations. And of course, we want to engage with you and hear your thoughts. What are your experiences with positive male role models? Who do you see in your life that is a positive male role model? And as we move through today's conversation, I absolutely want you, if you identify, with being a male and doing your best to be a positive male role model, be the best that you can be for yourself and others out there in the world. I want you to know this conversation is in honor of you too. And so as we talk with today's awesome panelists, please allow yourself to receive the appreciation that we are also extending out for you as well. Okay. So with that, I want to just quickly go around the panel and have each of you share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are in the world. And then of course we'll get into the conversation. And I'm going to begin with the man who inspired today's conversation, Norman Coulter Jr. Thank you so much for all that you are doing. And where are you? You're over here. Okay. Tell everyone who you are and where you are.
All right, keep it brief. Well, I'm Norman, as Kim said, and I am a veteran school teacher. I teach high school English out in the San Dimas area. I'm also clergy, technically, but I don't work at a parish. So I work in a classroom, and I do leadership research through Gonzaga University with an emphasis on self-leadership and more specifically using AI to help augment mentoring for Black and Latino adolescent males. So it's a little bit about me. And yeah.
And you're here in Southern California, correct?
I am in Pasadena. I live in Pasadena, but yes, I'm from South Central Los Angeles and Inglewood. So I grew up in an urban center, and I'm all LA. So go Lakers.
Awesome. Okay, and next, Andy, tell everyone about you and where you are.
I'm in Littleton, Massachusetts. Go Celtics. And I'm an author, speaker, transformation coach, a healer, a suicide prevention activist, and host of the Real Men Feel podcast.
Love that. Love it. Love it. Thank you, Andy. And down below, Andy, Chris, tell everyone about yourself.
Me? So Andy or Chris?
Chris.
All right. Yes. So I'm a business acceleration strategist and a professional speaker, but for the sake of today's show, I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Empowered Fathers in Action, a 501c3 organization dedicated to helping male dads and male role models to really step up in their role and duties to be more than just a provider, but to play an instrumental part in their children's development and how they can be better example and resources for their children to grow into our future leaders in their own homes, communities, and businesses.
And Chris, where are you located?
I'm in Danbury, Connecticut. So Andy, Andy and I think we're very close to one another. Yeah, very, very close.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all that and all that you're doing, Chris. My gosh. And Jeff, I'm so glad to have you here. Tell everyone about you and where you are.
I am Jeff Leisawitz. I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I am a life coach for storytellers and creatives of every flavor. So I help people, right? So I help people tell their stories, access their creativity, turn it into businesses if that's their thing. And I really come at it from, an intuitive and heart-centered space.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all of you for being here today. So let's get into today's conversation. Let's just do another quick show of hands. Do you feel like you had a positive male role model when you were growing up? We have two. Okay.
I had situations, but I wouldn't say until later.
Okay. And I thank you for that. I agree. Later for me as well. So yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that. What, here we are. They talk about positive male role model was just kind of like, I'm going to say like the goal, right? But like, we don't start there. So I'm just going to open it up to your journey. Who would like to start with your journey of if you did or didn't have a positive male role model growing up?
I'd be happy to.
Chris, please.
Well, I would say, and this is one of the reasons why I started Empowered Fathers in Action about 7 years ago. When I was growing up, my father was, a very good man, just, he was busy traveling, wanted to be successful, wasn't usually around. And when he was kind of emotionally checked out. So as a young boy, I didn't understand that, I was always looking for my father's attention, as any young boy would. And, obviously I didn't get it, and neither did my brother. So we grew up, getting into some trouble, and that was a way of getting attention, even if it was not good intention. And with that being said, I developed into a passive and aggressive style of communication behavior because I had this strong need for validation I didn't get from my father. So I sought it out in other people. And I don't need to go into all the details, but nonetheless, doesn't play out very, very well. But with that being said, I did have some various male role models that played a part. My 9th grade teacher was the first man that really showed that he cared. And that's why I respect teachers. I come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher. My dad's brother was a teacher. My aunt and my cousin's a principal of the school. So I highly respect teachers, especially the ones that take it outside of the role itself and really care and step up to make a difference in a young person's life. And my 9th grade teacher did that with me personally and on the baseball field, because he was my baseball coach in 9th grade.
Yeah, let's give it up right now for all the teachers. And of course, we have a teacher in the house with us today, Norman. Thank you so much. Teachers make such a huge difference. So Chris, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to throw it over to Norman. Norman, would you share with us your experience of, having a role model or not as a young person?
Absolutely, Kim. Thank you. And so I raised my hand because I had to learn early in life to kind of treat role models, have an a la carte type of mentality about it, and learn to take the male role model that was available to me for as long as they were available to me. And so for me, my journey in growing up, I was raised by my mom primarily. So I had a single mother, and then South Central Los Angeles and Inglewood, being an urban center, my mom did the best she could. But there are things when you walk out that door you face in the neighborhood, violence and threats, gangs, and all these notions that were perpetual threats, constant threats. And so for me, I want to give a shout out. First of all, happy Father's Day to Michael Roberts in Las Vegas. He was a deacon in the church I grew up in, and he already had kids of his own, and they adopted a child as well. So he had his hands full, but he always had time for me. And in between the lines, whether it was Sunday or he was outside working on the car, if I was near Michael, Big Mike, was what we called him, I would just kind of try to shadow him. He'd show me how to change my oil. He'd ask me questions about, what I was doing with sports and with clarinet and about my faith. And for me, that was the signature. Anybody who had time for me, whether it was the football coach across the street that got me into Pop Warner football, or it was somebody who technically already had their own family but made time for me. I had to learn to just take advantage of those moments, and as a teacher, that's what I've tried to translate, is exactly that model. I always tell students that, the opportunity you have is only good for the lifetime of that opportunity with that mentor. So if it's just one school year, or if it's 3 months, if you're awake, you're going to take advantage of that. And that's what it was for me the whole time I was growing up. I had a mentor, a guy named Rocky, great guy, took me under his wing for 3 months before he got married and moved to the East Coast from California. But for those 3 months, he picked me up on Saturdays. He took me to play against college competition. And it really was a catalyst for my understanding that I could be both resilient and that I could actually not define myself by my deficit, but actually I could define myself by my potential and step into that even against the odds. So I could go on, but really my journey had to do with that, especially as I was losing friends to gun violence, going to funerals way earlier than I should have been. It was very difficult at times to make sense of life, but these men a la carte helped me to do it. I also had a grandfather that was very instrumental in my life as well.
Norman, you mentioned something a moment ago about not emphasizing the deficits, but really taking advantage of the positive resources you had. And I just got to give it one of these.
Myself one of those.
Well placed. Very good.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing all of that, Norman. Andy, we're going to go on to you next. I want to hear from you and have you here, share with us your experiences.
Yeah, so I do not feel I grew up with a positive male role model. My parents got married. They were college sweethearts. My mom got pregnant, so they got married. They divorced when I was 5 years old. I have no memory of us together as a family. My dad had battles with alcoholism, mental illness, and he didn't have the best relationship with his father, so he treated me like a buddy. I just saw him for a few hours every Sunday, and he, unlike what Chris was saying, my dad was open and sharing about his emotional state, but perhaps too much for a child. And at the same time my parents split up, a male neighbor began molesting me. So I grew up with a deep fear and mistrust of adult men.
Andy, so sending you a virtual hug right now. And I just have to highlight, I don't even recall if you said this at the intro, but Andy hosts the Real Men Feel podcast. You can see it behind him. So I have to connect the dots there for everybody. You just heard what Andy shared as part of his experience and how far he's come, where he's encouraging men to feel, and I'm going to say feel through that, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Bravo. Good job for you. Thank you for being here and sharing that. Okay, Jeff, you are next. But before we hear from you, I actually want to share a video clip that you shared with us. And then we're going to hear a little bit more about your experience growing up.
Mm-hmm. A male role model that I didn't have when I was growing up was an older brother. So when I was in college, I was in a poetry class. And one of the poetry, I don't even remember what the poetry assignment was, but I ended up writing a poem about the older brother I never had. This was the guy who could teach me how to drive and to turn me on to great music, tell me what's going on with the girls, stuff like that. So it was a really interesting exercise to be able to think about someone that didn't exist in my life and sort of imagine what that might be and how that person might have affected me.
Thank you for sharing that, Jeff. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, but first I'd like to say you guys have great graphics going on.
Love it. Yep.
Thank you. It's a team effort. Thank you to the Let's Talk Fabulous team.
It's fabulous everywhere you look around.
First rate. Absolutely.
First rate. Absolutely. So yes, I wrote that poem many years ago and it stuck with me. I've written probably a zillion poems over the years, but that one kind of stuck with me because it was such an unusual, sort of way to look at the world, what we have and what we don't have. So I have been and am very fortunate to have had many positive role models. male role models in family and otherwise throughout the years. My dad, amazing uncle, grandfather, all this kind of stuff. But, you know, there was always that piece with like, where is the older brother, right? Where is someone like sort of like a peer who could teach me, who could give to me things like that? So I always thought that was kind of interesting. And, you know, you have your friends and things like that who are, so some of them, I guess you would say, are positive role models, yes. And some of them maybe not as positive. But that's what peers and friends are. I think you kind of get both from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. So he had a lot of positive male role models growing up. So let's start to identify what are some traits of positive male role models. And I hope that none of you will hold back on traits that you can identify that you also own. Because I really think I think there's a whole thing in the world, not just males, women, everybody, that do not always give themselves permission to own the light and the good positive traits within themselves. So I'm just going to put that out there. That's kind of a separate side note, but I hope that all of you will feel free to share what are some positive traits you see in a positive male role model. And Chris, I saw you nod your head first. I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, something we advocate in Empowered Fathers in Action. But before I do, I just wanted to just give a little backstory how that wasn't always the case with me, especially for the first 31 years of my life. I hid behind a mask. I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't, because again, that was all part of that validation, looking for that validation. If I could be somebody else, maybe I would be validated. But, you know, I mentioned my father was not that role model for me growing up, but I do credit my father for giving me the greatest gift that any man can ever ask for. And unfortunately, it happened on his deathbed, because my father passed away at the age of 56 from lung cancer. He hadn't smoked in many, many years, probably 28 years up to that point. But it took his life just right after he had experienced tremendous success. Everything that he basically sacrificed, his family, even his personal well-being, for the sake of becoming successful. But let me give you the backstory, how this plays into the values, because it'll be very, very important. With that being said, when my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at the age of 56, I can remember being with my father on the day before he passed away. And I remember him looking over at me. He couldn't talk. He was sedated by morphine at that point. You know, he was, letting his body wind down to die peacefully. But he was communicating to me. And I still to this day can't understand or explain how, but I could hear what he was saying without words being actually said. And I remember him looking over at me, and I can still get, goosebumps about it after all these years now. It's been, almost 25 years now that this happened. Well, it will be 25 years. And I remember him looking over at me and saying, I just want to let you know that I've always loved you. I loved your brother. I even loved your mother, even though I wasn't the best father. I wasn't the best husband. I could only be the best that I knew. And he began to explain how he was the black sheep of his family, that my grandfather didn't treat him well. They never had a strong relationship. And my dad just always grew up, again, just always kind of like similar to me, but in this way, probably in a worse way. And as a result of it, it began to sink in that, wow, he was just a product of what he only knew. And he can only show this is all he could do. And the thing is, that was the turning point in my life that I began to realize that I had been the victim, and I've been using excuses. I've been deflecting how I felt onto other people for all those years. That was the first time that I knew that I had to change and do something, because I'd been struggling with 12 years of addiction up to that point. My life was spiraling out of control. I probably wouldn't be here today if I didn't have that moment with my father. Not that I was suicidal or anything, just the lifestyle that I was leading at the time would have taken me out. And as a result of that transformation, it allowed me to come full circle to who I was. Hey,
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because some of your audio is kind of going in and out. I just want to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I want to make sure we catch everything you're saying.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Is everything going?
That's
okay.
Better. Yeah.
And I'll just make it quick, because I want all the other gentlemen to share. But With that being said, I was able to take my mask off and began to realize that transparency and vulnerability, two things that I had been taught growing up were weaknesses, not strengths of men, were actually the opposite. They were. I can learn to be transparent. I can learn to be vulnerable. And as a result of that, I came full circle with the values that represent me to this day and how I live as any role, as a husband, as a father, as a CEO, as a member of my community. It doesn't matter what hat I have on. I operate from transparency, honesty, and integrity, no matter what I do. And it's those values that I communicate from every day to myself and other people, how I behave, how my attitude that's happening for me, not to me, my emotions and how I respond, not react to situations and other people, and the level of action that I take on the priorities that matter and getting rid of anything that does not fill my cup. Because if it doesn't fill my cup, how could I be an example and a resource to help others through it? I was an enabler. I was a pleaser growing up because I was always looking for that validation. I stopped doing that. And now I give to others through empathy and kindness, not pleasing and enabling. And I empower them through my example and resourcefulness. But I got to fill my cup in order to spill on to others. Those are the values I operate from.
Okay, Andy, what are your thoughts of what Chris just said?
Oh, 100% agreement. I wrap that up, that the wearing of the masks, I say what the trait needed is authenticity. Willing to drop that mask, drop what you were taught, drop trying to act like you know, whatever you see in the media. I always, when I'm talking to men, I always ask them, like, who taught you to be a man? Yeah. And it can be from their words, their actions, or lack thereof. But if whoever taught you what it means to be a man, what it is to be masculine, if they were a miserable bastard, why would you want to follow that tradition? Why do you want to honor that teaching? So you have to be authentic, vulnerable, and courageous and break out of that so-called man box, that strict boundary that so many of us are told we have to be.
It really requires that another level of awareness of like, wait, what am I taking on, right? And really delving deep into who am I being, who are they being, and okay. And with that, Norman, I know you have more to share. Norman, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, everything that's been said, I can completely concur. And I take a lot of my cues as a teacher over the years, and as somebody who, you know, I live in this leadership space where now working with AI and creating resources for teens. Honestly, the conversations and the dialogues I have with teens over about 20 plus years of teaching are everything. So for me, letters like this, when I get letters from kids at the end of the year, and this student graduated, and I won't read it, but I will say that I've had three students this year that I know for a fact were suicidal ideating. And this particular student I had as a sophomore, but I'll just say in consistency with what Christopher shared and what Andy has shared, transparency is everything. And I lead with that because most of the kids I teach don't come from the inner city like me. So you always run the risk of, like, when you share your story, if you're scared to share it, you know, a lot of times it's because people don't want to be like an outlier. And as someone mentioned earlier, you don't want to appear weak as a male. A lot of false masculinity that we learn and we replicate. And it's also, by the way, replicated by women. You know, you can exist in this very corrosive patriarchy, even when you're not a man. But this student said, and I will read this one sentence. She said, "I was pretty negative as a suicidal teenager when I met you. And the hope and persistence that came from you being completely honest disgusted me." So I remember these interactions and had no idea that it was making an impact on her. But the shadow side, you know, I think she couldn't deny, as other letters I have here that I won't read. You know, I didn't just share positivity. I was hope and persistent. I had hope and I was persistent because I knew what it was like to be jumped at knife point when I was 9 years old and didn't know why the guy was jumping me. I had no quarrel with him, so to speak, right? But in the 80s, in a crack-infested South Central Los Angeles, you're dealing with people who have lost this sense of solidarity because of the effects of desperation and things that induce it. So when people are losing parents to incarceration, to drug addiction, and this stuff is not only affecting you, but it's affecting your peers, it's cutthroat out there. You know what I mean? And I think when I would tell these stories, people didn't understand the seemingly oxymoronic reality that you're hopeful and persistent. Why? And I was like, because, and this is why I wrote my most recent book, not a plug, just leading self became everything to me, because it's like I had to buy a surfboard and learn how to surf the waves of adversity. That stuff wasn't going away. This was the ish that I had been dealt. So I had to learn how to navigate that and cultivate that. I didn't have brothers and I had uncles, some of whom were incarcerated, but I didn't have people who were flanking me. I didn't even have anybody to recruit me into the gangs, because we moved a lot, right? And my mom worked extremely hard, but we moved to new neighborhoods. And when you're a new kid, you get tested. So I had to kind of level up in tenacity, transparency, authenticity, and valuing the narrative for what it is, because you're always learning. And this is something that a lot of young people today really struggle with. They don't see the present as a value to who they're becoming. And what I say is like, hey, I'm not standing here if I didn't begin to make decisions and activate this agency, right? That's what most people when they're young lack. We all feel powerless, especially when you've been abused and neglected, and you're told to keep that stuff a secret. And that's behind us. Even when you try to go to people and face them later, sometimes you're told that's behind us. Why are you bringing that up? And you're like, man, I got a cauldron of anger that's about 2 decades old. And now people are invalidating your narrative. So for me, the storytelling becomes extremely vital to healing. And all of that encompasses everything everyone has just said. But you never know what you're depositing. I've learned to just say principles over outcome. So I continue with the principles and I let the outcomes try to take care of themselves.
Man, there's so many golden nuggets and awesomeness in this conversation. Thank you for sharing all of that. And something I didn't say at the start, one of you mentioned girls, and I need to stand up and represent the women and say, women also benefit from having a positive male role model in the world. Absolutely. And if you did not have one, you also can heal from that. I just want to put that out there for all the women out there. Vulnerability, authenticity, you got feelings, right? All these things. And Norman, I love that you mentioned that someone actually told you, you're talking about all these things. And it was disgusting. And I want to highlight for anybody who can identify with that. What all these people talking about stuff and it's ew. I want to encourage you to continue to look at that, because that's because the light is being shown on something within you that wants to really be cleared out. And so I don't want to take the conversation in a whole other direction, but just want to acknowledge that piece. And so let's Norman, I'm going to share one of your video clips and continue this conversation about self-development and improvement and all that. So we're going to take a quick moment, be right back after this.
It's amazing how often we look at the target, staring at the misses, looking at the rim as if something's about to change, only to realize we should have been looking at ourselves the whole time. But then when you look at yourself, that's when you can begin to figure out what you need to fix.
Yeah, you guys have all been talking about that. Norman, did you have anything else you wanted to say about that video clip?
Well, just real quickly, I think self-examination is a lot more intimidating than people imagine, and one of the things that you deal with, and this kind of led me to where I am. I know AI is hotly debated, but one of the things students in my study I recently conducted indicate is that we've never been more public more quickly than we are now. And so this notion of being able to privately examine, to do these assessments, to engage, I believe that dialogue is a part of our healing. And so what we do is we reclude from that. And so what I try to do is create pathways into, kind of normalizing what it is to, like in basketball was real plain to see, is nothing, the basket's not changing. If you can't shoot, it's your fault, or maybe you have an injury. But the injuries, we've been taught to gloss over them and say, I'm fine. I was like, well, clearly you're not fine. So developing and cultivating the courage to look at self, I think, has been something that has been not a part of our school system, not a part of education, or really a part of our societal framing for how we develop ourselves and formatively when we're growing up. So thanks for sharing that, Kim.
Absolutely. So I realize we didn't directly answer the question of what are some positive traits we could see in a male role model. But so I'd like to just kind of have each of you share some words. What are some characteristic traits that come to mind for you when you think of positive traits in a male role model?
Jeff, you didn't get a chance to share. Would you want
Yeah, so I'll derail the conversation once again from Kim's, question. So Norman, what you were saying, I think, was great in terms of the nugget of having authenticity and vulnerability, right? When we speak, when we act, things like this, and through the lens of storytelling, this is incredibly important. We all tell stories, and that's kind of how we frame the world. So I've got this concept where I believe storytelling at its best is a way for us to be seen, expressed, healed, and connected. Okay, so when we are seen in the world, so often we are not particularly well seen. When you're driving down the freeway, right, people see you, but they're really just trying not to crash into you, right? Then you have the next level, and that's your acquaintances, people who, you might know at work or, just around town. They kind of get you, they kind of see you, but they don't really get you that much. They don't see you. And generally, they don't really care that much. Then you've got your real close people, your family, your friends, stuff like that. Hopefully, they do get you. But in my experience, they don't see us in every way. So that's the seen part. The next part is expressed. What does it mean to be expressed in this world? It simply means going from the potential to the actual. So the potential might be, think of like a dancer who knows all the moves, right? But on this particular Saturday night, she's kind of sitting in the corner while that disco ball is spinning around, the beat is thumping. As soon as she gets out there on the dance floor, she's expressed as a dancer. Okay, so that's the expression. What about healed? When we use authentic expression and vulnerability, whether it's in telling stories or communicating in any way, I believe there is a healing that occurs. And this healing can be through a catharsis, a letting go. That's often where this comes from, but it can also be from a celebration, right? What is the healing in a love song? No more lonely nights, right? So there is healing when we express and we tell stories with authenticity and vulnerability. So now, seen, expressed, healed. When we give that gift of our creativity, of our stories to the world, we actually become the gift because we show others that they can be seen, expressed, and healed. And this changes us from a bunch of storytellers, mentors, humans running around to an undercover army of rock star ninjas who are here to help heal the freaking world. And I think that's what we're all doing here.
So, Jeff, what would you like to see men do based on what you were just saying?
Tell authentic stories. That's it. And I think all you guys are doing it.
Yeah. One of the things that we advocate, I've been advocating for several years when I went through my own personal transformation, and what we teach men to do at Empowered Fathers in Action is that if you're truly going to be a role model, for your children, or if you are in the foster care system and you're going to be a role model there. I recently shared this when I did a closing keynote for the National Foster Care Association conference about a month ago. And a lot of times when we think that we're really giving from these values, we may not be helping people because we might be helping them to stay stuck. That's if we're going out of our way to do for them and please them and enable them. And I again, that's the world I came from. That's what I only knew how to do. But I've realized that as men, if we can really step into that authenticity that all the gentlemen here have shared, share those stories, not be vulnerable, be transparent about it. Doesn't mean you air your dirty laundry, but you can share that you don't have to hide behind these so-called what a real man is supposed to be, that you can be who you are. You can now be that example. And when you can step up to be that example, that means you got to serve yourself before you can serve others through your example. Well, like I said, if I don't watch what I do every day, I always wake up every morning and say, what can I control? What can I not control? And I focus on the 5 things I can control every day. The communication to myself. And and a lot of times men, even though they won't admit it, they're not operating from their inner champion. They're operating from their inner critic. They're operating from that little boy that's trapped inside of them that dictates in how they communicate to themselves and other people. This is why they have, strained marriages. They have problems in the workplace, maybe problems around people in general. So I always look at, like, am I listening to my inner critic? I'm being assertive in my communication, not passive aggressive. My behavior I can control. I have to make sure that my behavior doesn't contradict my communication. They have to be in harmony. So I strive to be assertive with my behavior. So I want to be specific, clear, and concise with my communication and my behavior, that they're in alignment. My attitude, I have to always see challenges, obstacles, problems. It's not something to avoid or run away or have a pity party about, but to welcome it, to embrace it, because without challenges, obstacles, and setbacks, we can't experience gratitude. We can't experience the ability to find solutions to then enjoy successes in our life, whatever that means to you. Now, imagine you're being the example to your children as a foster care male role model or a big brother, whatever that may be. It's powerful. So my attitude is I look at anything that's happening outside my control is happening for me, not to me, even if it's a difficult situation. And then my emotions and how I respond versus react to situations. Because I can't control other people.
Right.
I can't control situations. I can only control what I can. But if I can learn to respond, even though I'm experiencing it through a negative emotion, I'm not reacting from that negative. I'm responding from a secondary emotion. So if my son is observing what I'm doing in that situation, it's going to help him more than if I were just trying to tell him this is how you should do it, when you should do it, and why you should do it. They do it subconsciously for what they observe. And then my action. So I would say that for values, when we can step into our values, the men who use discipline, means that you're doing something when you don't want to do it, but by doing it will fill your cup, and being consistent. I'll say that again, being consistent.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are a game changer. So when you can do this for yourself as a male role model, do a daily routine, something to fill your cup every day. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be, the best father, but I'm going to be my best for that day, or in a better father than I was yesterday, because I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm using that discipline and consistency to operate from those values that will empower my son and other children to do this, to do the same for them, what they get to decide to do with it. So the storytelling and everything that the gentlemen have shared here is powerful. And those are the things that I believe in and I speak on, when I'm doing talks through our nonprofit 501c Empowered Fathers.
We're going to take a break in just a moment here, but I want to just connect some of the dots. You guys are doing a fantastic job, but I want to do it again because repetition is helpful, right? So these men are talking about being vulnerable, sharing your story, and you might be thinking, what the heck? That's way too scary. What I have learned, and I've heard many, many times from other people, is you share from the place of being healed. So from where you are to being able to feel free to share, it's healing. That is the bridge that gets you there. And so I just want to highlight that can be so many components that are in that, a lot of what Chris was saying as part of that. I just want everyone to know that your healing is a gift to everybody around you. And of course, number one, first and foremost, to yourself. You deserve that. We're going to take a quick moment to just celebrate all the fathers and recognize Father's Day. And we're going to come back and continue this conversation. And I want to hear from our audience too. I'm going to throw it out to you. What are some positive traits you see in men? And feel free to tag someone who you think is a positive male role model in the world. Give them some love, and we'll be right back.
There's a boy with big brown eyes, and Daddy loves him so. And every night he sings your name and watch you grow and grow. Who are you now that you're home? And where are you now that we're alone? 15, not a man, just a boy with a plan. There's no time for you. And fools in life and teenage strife clouding the view. Children of my own want to know just who you are, but time to dust and wanderlust have taken you so far. Who are you now that we're alone? And where are you now that you're gone? Shaking hands help you to stand. Ask how you been. The words won't come out. You twist and in doubt. We're alone again. Who are you now that we're alone? And where are you now that you're gone?
And that was a video created by our founder, Tamara Hunter. So thank you for that, Tamara. Very beautiful. I want to take a quick moment to highlight some of our audience comments. We have Angel with us today who is saying, wow, so powerful. And we also have Tamara with us today, just acknowledging how this show has the ability to change generational patterns and challenges that many face today. And that is a question I wanted to ask you guys. What are some challenges? I mean, we've already highlighted some, but is there a challenge that you see men going through that kind of makes it harder for them to get to the space where they can be healed and be that positive male role model in the world? Anything that we haven't yet highlighted you'd like to address?
Well, I'm sorry. I'll defer. Go ahead.
Loneliness for men is an epidemic right now. It is so difficult for adult men to find a friend. It's not like when you're a kid, you can go, hey, want to play? Like adult men won't do that. So I find that loneliness is the biggest block to healing, because men, we can't heal alone. We need other men, right? We need role models. We need peers. We need people below us to help up. It's just going it alone is a huge mistake. And loneliness is, again, it's an epidemic right now.
Okay. Who here would like to speak to that?
I would just concur, and Norman, I'll just say 2 seconds. I know you want to. Men have to feel psychologically safe to open up. Especially type. If you're talking about type A or dominant men, which is very hard. That was my father, and that was part of me as well. And it took me, a while to become transparent and vulnerable. But I would say that, again, to Andy's point, they have to feel comfortable with a role model or a certain group of men. That once you break the ice, that from there it really, that's where the healing really starts. And it's and it's magnificent of what can happen from that. And, when you create that psychologically safe space.
Yeah. Norman?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, I was just going to add that I think it couldn't have been a truer statement made about the loneliness. And I think a part of that is kind of American culture. But most of us men exist in more than one tribe, right? So yes, I'm a man, but I'm also an African American, and I'm also, in an athletic sector for a large part of my life. But I was also in a faith sector, and so when I went through, I've been through a divorce and different, we have this way of defining ourselves by traumatic events. And then we start looking at, we always do the Scooby-Doo and try to trace backwards and try to solve it, right? And figure out, I think for men, they're not really trying to solve, they're trying to figure out how much of a failure they actually are. So, you know what I mean? You're not objective. And that's why dialogue is so important. So for me, I experience that right now, like in the sense of just, part of my regulation is leaning into affirmation, which I love that. That's a lot of what Christopher is talking about today, because I'm right there with you, brother. It's not something we're taught. That's why there's so much bravado. There's a lot of like posturing and a lot of puffing up of the chest. And first guy I ever saw murdered, it was pride. He was shot to death after winning a fight. You know what I mean? The guy came back and retaliated. So, and I watched him lay on his lawn for like 4 hours until the coroners came, and I started to see very emphatically at an early age that in this island, whatever this masculine island is that we create, it literally can kill you. And this is, we see men struggling because it is not in vogue to be interdependent and to be part of community that will help you to heal, lest you indict all these culprits that exist in the world. But it's okay to take care of yourself. And that message could not be more amplified.
Absolutely. Okay. And so we still have some time, but we're nearing towards the end of the show. And I want to make sure we can address this a little bit more. It's such a fantastic subject. I'm glad you guys can speak to this. So what is the solution? How can men come together and start to show up more for each other and let them know that they don't have to do things alone?
Andy, go ahead, and I can follow after you.
Men's groups. Find a group, talk, share. It's
like
been said already.
What are some men groups? Can you give us some example or resources?
Mankind Project, Every Man. I used to lead meetings at mensgroup.com. Churches have men's groups, Rotary Club. I mean, find a group of men. Yeah. The first time a man shares, it gives everybody else in that circle permission to share, permission to be human. That's what men need.
Absolutely.
I agree. Communication is so key. And if a man, I'm a firm believer, I know for myself, and something we teach at EFA is that we are all a product of our self-limiting beliefs growing up from childhood. And they manifest itself in our adult lives in passive aggressive ways or a combination of both. And these are things that, where we have problems. We have problems with other people in certain relationships, personal, business. It can be with our children and so on. But if before men can recognize that their own self-limiting beliefs are the things that are actually getting in the way, to Andy's point, a men's group could help them to now feel vulnerable and safe, that they can now come to terms with that you can release those self-limiting beliefs and know that you don't have to operate from those tapes. Your brain is like a computer. It can be. You can not that you're going to erase everything, but you can erase a lot of the things that you've learned. Not saying it's easy, because it's not, but I know I did it. I did it over a 5-year period, and it wasn't easy. I had to learn to do things that I've never been taught before. But if I knew that if I didn't do it, I wouldn't have the life that I aspired to do. I wouldn't be able to be the father that my father couldn't be. I couldn't be the husband that my father couldn't be. I couldn't be the leader that I aspire to be without working on myself and shedding those self-limiting beliefs. And it's never that we graduate, it's always work in progress, but knowing that by working on it every day and being the example, being a resource, communicating, not only to yourself first, but to other people in an assertive way, it's just profound in what it can do to help you and the people around you. There's 5 things that I always say that we can control: communication, behavior, attitude, emotions, and action.
Yeah. And I want to add, and then I want to get to a video from Andy really quick, is when we haven't had that person that could be that role model in our lives, I think a lot of times also, let's say you're too afraid to go find a group, or you can't find a group, or you're trying and you feel like it's not working. It can also come down to you being that for yourself first, giving that to yourself first. And then from there can be the ripple effects of more people showing up as well. I want to take a quick moment to share a video from Andy, and then we're going to begin to wrap up today's conversation.
Hi, Andy Grant here, host of Real Men Feel. When it comes to positive male role models, I think one of the most important things is to find someone who is authentic, meaning they're comfortable in their own skin. They're not trying to fit into some role, wear some mask that they learned from pop culture or their parents or teachers, their upbringing, society at large. They know who they are, and they are willing to be themselves. They accept and express the full emotional range that all human beings have.
Okay, thank you for that, Andy. Yeah, to continue to highlight the authenticity. Okay, we're going to get back to the traits. And some of you have been typing in the private chat over here some positive traits of men, and I love it, but I want to give you an opportunity to share them live on the show. So, Norman, what are some positive traits that, if we just had to highlight some keywords, what are some positive traits that you see in men?
Presence. So being present in the moment, not putting people off, being present. I mean, at the urinal, this is when dudes talk to me the realest, honestly, in the bathroom. No exaggeration. It's as awkward, but I find that they do that, the parking lot. And so that's presence, consistent listening ear. You can't be a one-off. I think that one of the greatest traits that made a difference on me for male role models is that it wasn't necessarily scheduled, but I knew that availability was not an anomaly. I knew that they were there for me. And then I would just add, non-dominating language. I think the perception, especially me, I'm a tall guy and I'm, former athlete and all that stuff. So sometimes there's a perception I think people have, young and old. And what I do is I try to disarm that, with this ability to not try to dominate their feelings. And I suck at it sometimes. I'll be honest, you can ask people close to me, but I do know that that's when I've had the greatest effect. And I think that's when people have affected me the most is, that invitational kind of way of saying, hey, I am here to listen and I don't want to fix you. I want to listen to you. And if I can partner with you, that tends to have a great, just incalculable fruit. And one last thing I'll just say really quickly is that because the formalized groups are wonderful and I'm here for them and I'm the kind of person that would take advantage of that. But I have just found that, when I was going through stuff where I had to talk about custody stuff I was dealing with, or I have to, I find that people are attracted to the little bit that you share. When you show some skin, for men, they go, hey man, you got a second? And they come in your room and they shut the door behind you, but it's like you put that out there and it's like a flare. You shoot up there, it's a beacon. And these guys will say, you know what, I think that's a guy. So I might be their 3 a.m. person. It's not a group. It might just be that I'm that person.
Yeah, and we're nearing the end of the show, but you have an amazing app for adolescent Black and brown youth to go to when they feel like they don't have anybody else. Just got to throw that out there. There are all sorts of resources out there to be able to connect with someone for that source of hope and help. And Jeff, I don't think we've heard from you in a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to comment on Norman's piece there. So it's really interesting that people are sort of opening up at the urinal, right? And what this says to me is you sort of meet there and you're never going to see this person again, right? It's 5 minutes in the bathroom kind of thing. Or do you guys know any apps or groups where it is sort of almost like anonymous like that, where instead of a men's group, you're showing up with the same guys every week, that it's really kind of the opposite of that? And have you found that effective in other ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on where people are at, but I find that with men's groups, it usually the leader that can be transparent is the one that can maybe hopefully get the ball rolling. It's just like in a company. When I train companies, when companies say, hey, we're looking for our middle management to step up and do things differently. Well, are you guys doing that? No, we don't need that. Well, then this is not going to work. But if the C-suite was doing it and they're on the same page as their middle, now you're going to get somewhere. And I find that as a leader, and regardless of role, that somebody just steps up to be the leader, and I always find I respect men and even women that are transparent and vulnerable and in a positive way, and put things. Those are the people I really look up to and admire, because they're the ones that truly help people each and every day. They're not just airing their dirty laundry. That's different. But they're not afraid to put something out there to get under the skin of someone, even if it pushes somebody's buttons the wrong way at first. It's pushing that person out to do something, to get better at something they haven't been doing well. And that to me is, if you can have a group, and wherever you meet men are, to help them do that. We need more of those groups.
You guys have been fabulous today. I don't think I've used that word more than in this particular episode with all these men, but you have been fabulous and fantastic and wonderful, sharing everything today. And I know there's still so much more, but we are literally at the very end of today's show. I'm going to give each of you just 10 seconds. What is your one tip for the men out there that you would like to share? And I'm going to start with you, Norman. What's one tip that you'd like to give?
My one tip is, because we are in the age of technology, and as you referred to the link or the GPT that I've created, I think that if a man needs to be private, there's Unc AI is what I use with kids, but just this notion of being able to talk to something and allow it to be a private place where it doesn't know who you are, I think that's a great start. And if that's linked, so. Yep.
Awesome. And Jeff, how about you? 10 seconds.
Tell authentic stories. I got 6 seconds left.
Okay, Chris, your final thoughts.
Real quick, for men, give without expectation, from empathy and kindness, not pleasing and enabling, and receive without resistance. If it serves you, fill your cup, give again. It's a boomerang. It comes back. Keep repeating the process.
Excellent. And Andy?
Too many men would rather be right than be happy.
Ooh.
Be willing to be wrong.
Oh, that was so good. That was a fantastic bomb. I love that one. Mic drop. Okay. Thank you so much for all that you have shared today. And I just want to acknowledge all the men out there who are identifying with what is happening here today. Know that you are not alone. There are groups, there are resources. There's so many people who would love to connect with you, support you. And I also want to encourage you to start to give yourself that same love and show up for yourself in these ways, because there's so much more that's possible. You are a light, and the world benefits from you being here. Have an amazing day, everybody. We'll see you all again next week.
This was great. Gentlemen, great to meet you. Appreciate this.
I want to say thank you for joining us today, and welcome you back next Sunday as we once again are joined by a panel of subject matter experts that will explore and focus in on our fabulous lives. Until next Sunday.